Hey guys, welcome to the Mind Hacking Happiness Podcast. I am Sean Webb. Today we're presenting day 4 of the 45-day Mind Mastery 101 course from Mind Hacking Happiness. It's free for you here now. We may have to pull this video, these recordings down in the future when the course is no longer free. But for now, you get $1,000 off and you get a brand new course for free on how to master your mind. Just go to mindhackinghappiness.com, register there. You'll get in and then be grandfathered in and always have access to the course from here through as long as the website exists and never have to pay for it. But in the future, these videos may come down. So if you want access indefinitely, make sure you go do that. And if you go to the website and you log in and you become a member of the course and then you share it out to a few folks or at least 5, get those guys to sign up for free as well so we can spread the message on how to take control of our minds. And then if they put your name in the forums where there's a button up there on the top of the course page that says, hey, who sent me? You click that, they put your name in there, you're entered into a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift certificate, and for every 5 people that mention your name, you're entered again for that same prize. We may have more than one prize in the prize pool, as a matter of fact, and 0 people right now have qualified. So if you're the only one who qualifies for the drawing, you win by default. So there's a free $100 for you or more, depending on what prize pool gets to, depending on the activity of the free course. Anyway, this is the course that multiple psychologists, multiple neuroscientists, and actually a couple of Navy SEALs have popped in to say, hey, yeah, you might want to try this out because this is kind of the best in class course for taking control of your mind. So that is a free gift that we're providing you. Check it out. If you want indefinite access to it, go to mindhackinghappiness.com. Just go through that process there, and then you'll be apprised of the other announcements that we've got coming up in the future. Don't forget to check out the 2 Seals and a Walrus podcast if you're interested in an adult language version of how to take control of your mind and take responsibility for your life and actions. A couple of the SEALs came together and we're doing a podcast and having interesting guests on the topics of consciousness expansion and having a wider view of life, etc. So anyway, with no further ado, here's day 4. Hope this message finds you well. Hey, welcome to day 4 of the 45-day program, Mastering Your Mind 101 from Mind Hacking Happiness. I am Sean Webb. Hey, good to see you again. So today is going to be a quicker lesson than the last couple because I know those ran a little long, a little over 20 minutes, but today is going to be a little bit less. We're going to talk about what we had you do for homework last night and talk about a little bit of the science of why journaling works the way it does and why it's helpful for us being able to control our mind. And so today we're going to talk about your consciousness. So yesterday's homework, we did a quick journaling exercise. Why? Why did we do that quick journaling exercise? Well, again, going back to our multiple levels of consciousness yesterday, you have this thing of your waking awareness, which is everything that you're experiencing at the moment, what you're hearing my voice from, what you're experiencing your room from, everything that's taking in all of your senses, all of your thoughts. That's your waking awareness. That's your experience of you. That's your executive decision-making you. But down below that level of you, down below your waking awareness, you have multiple levels of consciousness, which are where your ideas come from. They're handed up to you from below, at which point you can make decisions about whether those are good ideas or bad ideas. And journaling is the discipline of letting these levels of consciousness say what they want to say with a little bit of direction to help them along. Because again, your multiple levels of consciousness are there to help you accomplish the tasks that you want to accomplish. And the result is that these levels of consciousness can then feel heard and clean out their message cues from whatever they're storing inside. You help them get those things out onto paper, and that's why journaling is effective and why it has positive results from both a mind mastery perspective and also from a general wellness perspective. And we'll talk about some of the science of journaling moving forward. Now, why is feeling heard a big deal? Well, we don't exactly know, but it goes back to some science that was done by John Gottman. And this is some pretty groundbreaking science if you haven't heard about it before. John Gottman is the scientist who put together the Love Lab studies, which can predict if they listen to your conversation between you and your spouse for 15 minutes, they can predict divorce rates to 95% accuracy, to 90% accuracy. And then if they listen to an hour of your conversation, they can bump that up to 95% accuracy just by listening to a conversation between you and your spouse or you and your significant other for 15 minutes to an hour. They can nail whether or not the relationship is going to succeed or not to 95%. And that's a big deal. That's a huge number. If anything's over 50-50, it's better than chance. And he's found something that is an exclusive discriminator of whether or not a relationship will succeed or not. And here's the secret. If the female of the relationship, and this was a dated study, they studied some heterosexual relationships back in the day, but basically it was if the female feels by seeing a behavioral change in the male that she is being heard, the marriage makes it, period. And if this single factor is not present, the marriage ends in divorce to 95% accuracy. So basically, if the female feels that she's being heard by her influences on the male, her suggestions to the male, and she sees it in his behavior, and that makes her feel heard, the marriage makes it. And if not, the marriage doesn't make it. And that was the single discriminating factor that basically dictates whether or not a relationship will or will not succeed, is that one factor. And they nailed it, and that's why he's famous. He's world famous. He's created an entire practice around that one science. And so why feeling heard is important and how this ties back to journaling is that your limbic system quiets its emotional reaction when the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex and medial prefrontal cortex acknowledge and understand the emotion that's being produced in your head. Okay, so, and this goes back to the name it, tame it studies that we mentioned previously, that when your limbic system has a negative reaction in your brain and it starts to create negative responses, when you put that cognitive understanding to that negative reaction, the negative reaction turns off. Physiologically, it turns off in your brain and then downregulates. So the anger goes away, the sadness goes away, the fear goes away. When you put an understanding to that level of negativity that arises within you, it goes away. And it's a physiological, it's not like, oh, this is a great theory. This is proven in fMRI studies. They've actually seen it in brain scans happen in real time when this happens. And so what that's basically showing is that when the limbic system is firing and creating the negative stuff, the two brain regions that are responsible for understanding emotion, which are the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the RVL-PFC there, and the medial prefrontal cortex, the MPFC. Well, when those two regions fire, it turns off your limbic system and the thing that's creating the negative stuff. And so all the way down at the cellular level, messages are constantly being sent within the body, right? So when your limbic system is firing and creating some negative emotion, fear, sadness, anger, worry, regret, whatever it is, that's a message that's being sent from one part of your brain to another, and it creates feeling responses within your body. It changes your heart rate, it changes your respiration, it changes how you feel inside, etc. Well, when those messages are sent, equilibrium is not attained until the sending entity gets confirmation that the message has been received and understood. And so this whole system up here in our minds is one of feeling heard. It's one of acknowledgement of the message that we've sent being received and someone doing something about it, which is the number one identifier of John Gottman's Love Lab of whether or not a marriage makes it. The woman must feel that her message has been sent and received and the male has done something with it for the marriage to be able to succeed and to last the test of time. Well, that's just an extrapolation of what happens in our brain. Because what happens in our brain when our brain creates our negative stuff and our negative thoughts and our negative feelings, our negative emotions, the brain must feel that those things have been heard and acknowledged before it will quit making those. But the magic is that once the brain does feel heard, that those negative messages have been sent and heard, and that the old trash has been emptied, so to speak, it quits creating that stuff just for that moment until the next time that it wants to create stuff, at which point, if it feels heard, it'll shut it off again. But see, this pattern can start to emerge where if you can start to understand what's going on in your mind and give it the understanding of feeling heard, then it turns off the negative stuff more quickly and doesn't hold on to it. And so when we're going back to journaling, journaling is the action of allowing some levels of subconscious in your mind, those levels of consciousness in your mind, to flush out a lot of the old stuff that maybe it hasn't let go of, or maybe wants to be heard on that last prompt that you started with journaling. And so what you're doing through the action of journaling is allowing those levels of consciousness to be heard. And you're taking the action of writing it on a piece of paper. So your level of subconscious is not only being heard through a thought that it keeps, maybe keeps arising and you're not doing anything about it, you're not doing anything about it, you're not doing anything about it. It keeps sending it, but you're not doing anything about it. So you wind up in divorce with your own brain. But when you take that pencil or pen and you write it out on a piece of paper, you are giving it the confirmation that you have been heard and I am taking action to write this down. The communication is received and I'm taking action. I'm changing my behavior associated with the message that you sent me. And so the negative stuff quells. Okay? That's the magic of journaling. And there's something fundamental within our brains that it's wired to create a higher level of happiness for us when we feel that we're being heard. That's not only true within just the centers of our brain talking to each other, but when we feel heard as human beings, right? When we feel heard out in the world that someone has received our message and has taken action because of it, that fires off a ton of awesome stuff in the body. Cortisol levels decrease, positive neurotransmitters flood our system, heart gets healthier, a bunch of really cool stuff happens where our vagus nerve fires. And our vagus nerve is the thing that transfers information to and from our brain down through our bodies. So when you feel that heart opening up, that's your vagus nerve firing. The vagus nerve goes all the way down into our gut brain. And it allows for better health outcomes to occur, because if our vagus nerve is firing more often, information is flowing back and forth from our brain to our body, from our body to our brain, to create higher levels of health. Okay? So that's why this type of action is important for us to engage in. Journaling is listening to your multiple levels of consciousness, which make them feel heard. So your levels of subconscious can say, hey, thanks for listening. I feel much better now, right? And so you've cleaned out their trash cans, so to speak. You've cleaned out what they want to say, and you've acknowledged through writing it down that you've heard and are reacting to what they're saying. And that creates a great deal of well-being for those multiple levels of subconsciousness in your mind. Now, the results of journaling are amazing. These studies about journaling are just flabbergasting. Here's one. 76% of participants who journaled before an operation, a medical operation, going into the operating room, were healed 11 days afterwards, after their operation, over 58% of the control group. So 76% of the participants who journaled were healed 11 days over 58% of the control group, right? So 58% of the control group was healed over 11 days. 76% of the journaling people were healed over 11 days just because they wrote some emotional feelings from their subconscious, from their other levels of consciousness, and put it down on a piece of paper. Another study showed that patients with 20 minutes of journaling for 3 consecutive days. So just writing for 20 minutes, 3 days in a row, and then that's all they ever did, had 2 times the health improvements 4 months later over a control group. So their blood work was twice as better. Their heart rates and blood pressure were twice as better on their improvements for their health 4 months later after just 3 days of 20 minutes of journaling 3 days in a row. That's amazing. Another study showed that a group of laid-off engineers, and this was done kind of at a last moment type of thing, where they were like a big company, a tech company was laying off in Texas, I believe, and they said, hey, let's do a journaling study. Well, they took 2 groups of laid-off engineers who journaled for 20 minutes for 2 days. So that's 40 minutes of journaling. So they did one session, and then they did another session, and then that's it. That's it. That's all they did was 2 days of journaling for 20 minutes. One control group didn't do any journaling. And 4 months later, the folks who journaled were 3 times as likely, setting all the other considerations aside, right? They split these groups down the middle, and they said, okay, well, we have this many assholes in this group, and this many assholes in this group, and this many really proficient engineers in this group, and this many of really proficient engineers in this group. And so they kind of made them very equal as much as they could, taking a bunch of things into consideration. And then they said, okay, you guys journal, you guys don't. These guys were 3 times more likely to have a job 4 months later than the folks who didn't journal. That's some pretty impressive stuff, if you ask me. And what that shows is how effective listening to the levels of subconscious that you have are, and allowing them to communicate to you in a way that you can allow them to feel heard. And basically, I believe that's what journaling is. So what we're going to do is we're going to hand out homework again today, where you did a 5-minute journaling session yesterday. Let's do a 10-minute journaling session today, and you can set an alarm. And if, again, you're kind of enjoying this and you want to do a little bit more, you can do 15 minutes if you want, but let's do 15 minutes max. Let's not get burned out again, right? And the prompt today is a very specific prompt, and I want you to try to write on this and just keep writing until the alarm stops. And if you need to reset and start over again, you can rewrite the prompt, but here's the prompt. The largest challenge of my life was when blank. And then you're just off and running writing. And if you run out of things to say about whatever it was, the largest challenge of your life was when, then say the second largest challenge of my life was when blank. And if you need to take a moment to prepare about the 1 or 2 things that you want to write about, just think about what the challenges were and decide what the challenges were, and then set your timer. And then write out the largest challenge of my life was when ... and then hit your timer and go. And just write. And keep writing, because here's the thing. You can't just judge and edit what you want to say in your mind and allow your subconscious to be flowing. Because what you're doing there is you're judging, you're deciding, let it go. Just let go. Whatever comes out, even if it's gibberish, even if it's flim-flam, hoot-about-about, whatever it is, write it down on the piece of paper and allow your subconscious to create that information that's flowing through your pen, and just let it out. Because what you're doing is you're listening to those levels of subconscious, you're acknowledging that you're receiving their message of that subconscious, and you're taking action by writing it down on a piece of paper that communicates out to the world what those levels of subconscious want to say about this particular thing. And the reason that we're using this particular thing is purposeful. Okay? Thanks. Hope you guys had a great day 4. Day 5 tomorrow. Can't wait. Talk to you soon.